The Boy Scouts have long been a pinnacle of American youth culture, but the organization is now engulfed in a media firestorm concerning its cover-up of thousands of cases of sex abuse among Scout leaders and volunteers. Legal journalist Molly Barrows joins us now to break it down. Molly, just how rampant is this? Is this media hysteria that we so often see?
It's very rampant, similar to what you saw with the Catholic Church. You heard accusations for years, and then as they looked into it, they realized that it spanned decades, and that's what you're seeing with the Boy Scouts. This particular group of attorneys called Abused in Scouting formed in February, and they began their own investigation looking into accusations that spanned 8 decades. And so it went back like from 1944 all the way to the present time. And they found 350 previously unknown adult Scoutmasters and members who are alleged abusers. And so there is just a wave of lawsuits that's coming out of Philadelphia, where one particular lawsuit was filed earlier this month. And that particular group of attorneys said that they've got literally dozens and dozens and dozens of other accusations of people who said that they were molested and abused by Scoutmasters over many years.
Same type of course that obviously the Catholic Church, exactly the same kind of course.
Yes.
You got a Scoutmaster here, then they move them to point B, and then they move them to point C. They know what's going on.
Right.
They're afraid that if they disclose what's going on, that's going to hurt the image of the Scouts. So they cover it up at the highest levels.
Right.
And, there's no difference here. I mean, it just has played itself out time and time. What I find amazing about this case is that it's taken so long to surface. I remember rumblings about it maybe 10 years ago, and then it kind of disappeared. And then when I went and took a look, it disappeared because there was money that exchanged hands to make it disappear.
Yes.
How old are these accusers, and what types of abuses are they saying they suffered?
And I haven't seen every complaint for each of the victims, alleged victims that have filed, but the one that this particular group, Abused in Scouting, represented, the first lawsuit that was filed in the Philadelphia area. He said he was 12 or 13 when the abuse started. He said he was abused dozens of times by this particular Scoutmaster, and this seems to mirror the accusations that are coming from these kids, that they were left vulnerable to these predators because the organization did little to vet volunteers or to vet these Scoutmasters, or even when they were made aware of complaints, they basically swept them under the rug or did what they could to hide these accusations. So the accusations are essentially what you hear in many accusations of child molestation, that these kids were groomed, that these people sought after the children that were going to be the easiest to abuse, if you will. They created a relationship with the vulnerable.
Well, what I find interesting is they actually had something called perversion files, or that's what it's gotten the name of, the perversion files. It's just like the Catholic Church had something similar. Who are our pervert priests? How do we make them go away? How can we hide them? So these are perversion files. These people aren't dressed up like priests. They're dressed up like little boys, I guess. At any rate, so you've got the perversion files. Talk about it a little bit.
Well, it's so interesting, and it goes back again to this investigation that these attorneys did, and I think, and I don't know this, but in light of what happened with the investigation into the Catholic Church and numerous other organizations that covered up perpetual systematic abuse, these perversion files are essentially where the Boy Scouts of America, according to these particular victims and according to this organization that looked into it, where they filed away these accusations of this Scoutmaster did this in this year and this person did that in this year. And these allegations were always against children. And this particular expert that this group hired to look into this found some almost 8,000 Boy Scout sexual misconduct perpetrators and over 12,000 victims. And this is between 1944 and 2016. So it's also during this time period when people don't want to come forward and talk about it. That's why so many of these victims are so much older. And again, you have laws that were about the statute of limitations that prevented them from being able to come forward. So I think, in the overall context, it's made it easier to come forward with these allegations. People are willing to listen and then maybe potentially adjust the laws accordingly.
By the way, I saw an article about this maybe 6 months ago. And it was talking about the notion, it's almost like the Catholic that they're rule followers.
Yes.
Okay? You talk about it's almost like the older Scout guide knows that this is a rule follower. Let me go after this rule follower, just like the Catholic Church. This boy who is works there and every Sunday. He's a rule follower. It's really interesting when you talk about that psychology and you compare it to the iconoclast who says, you know what, I'm not a rule follower. I know when the Boy Scout leader ain't right, and I know when the priest is not right.
And it's within me enough to say I'm going to distance myself from this person. But then if you have a child that maybe has a troubled background, or even if they don't, maybe their personality makeup is just such that they're not boat rockers.
Yeah.
They don't want to go against or rebel against authority. And so they become victims of these guys. But the other interesting part is that basically New York has passed a law that allows a 1-year window for some of these older victims to be able to present their charges. Yeah. And, of course, that leads to the financial impact that it's going to have against the organizations like the Catholic Church and the Boy Scouts of America.
They're not going to weather this. They're not going to, if it's as bad as I think
Whatever it takes for accountability, which is what you know best.
Exactly. Close them down if they need to be closed down.
Yes.
Thank you for joining me, Mo.
Thanks, Pat.